Welcome to a new episode of the Goodfirms Leaders Roundtable. We're almost nearing the end of our second season of the podcast. We've released close to 16 to 17 episodes so far, talking about RPA, UI, UX, game development, leadership, and so much more. And for today's episode, we are going to talk about a very popular topic called AI in software development. I am in conversation with the chief human operator of TimSpark company Carl. He guides organizations through the complexities of AI integration, harnessing its potential to transform operations and catalyze growth. So, Carl, I welcomed you to our show. Do you want to add something to the introduction, something that I might have missed?
Yeah, thank you for having me first and foremost. And I think the only thing I would like to change is that I'm a little bit of a free radical AI person at the moment. So I'm working with TimSpark in the capacity as head of AI advisory and solutions, but I'm also working on my own startup, which is more focused on sort of automating using AI agents more specifically. And I've been a part of sort of the AI space for longer than it's been popular. So today I'm utilizing that knowledge the best way I know how.
Okay. You often call yourself the free radical AI guy. So, what does that mean, and why do you call yourself that?
Well, so first and foremost, when it comes to AI knowledge at the moment, there seems to be some scarcity around sort of people who have deep insights into AI. And most of those people already work at frontier model labs like OpenAI or Anthropic or in big tech firms somewhere. So, those of us who are left, we are sort of trying to make AI a beneficial thing for all of humanity, which means that we work on a whole bunch of different projects all at once. And that's very much where the free radical aspect of this comes from.
Okay, that's interesting. And it's so good to know that, you've taken interest in AI, learning about it, implementing it way before it was popular, because I think now it's kind of like a trend. But, when you've been in the industry for so long, I know that I'm in for some really amazing information because you have such a decade of experience implementing AI solutions for the company.
Thank you.
So I was doing my routine research about this episode and about you as a guest on our podcast. And I specifically came to know that you changed your career from finance to tech. And now I have not seen someone do that. So congratulations first that you did it
Thank you.
successfully.
Thank you.
And what actually prompted you to make this change? So what resources did you use to do this drastic transition?
Yeah, so I think it's important to stress that I didn't actually make it into finance, but I attended business school. So that was sort of the formal education. The idea was that I was going to have a career in finance, and manage money and become wealthy and whatnot. But then midway through, I read about artificial intelligence in a book called The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. Inherently a very hard book to sort of to complete. I probably gave it 3 or 4 passes, but the idea of artificial intelligence and what that would do for our economy more broadly was really just a game changer for me, because even back well over a decade ago, sort of AI represented abundance, right? So economic abundance, and it would push the frontier of what is possible. And we're sort of seeing that right now in real time unfolding. But given that sort of this was something that I could see it so clearly just coming about in my lifetime, it seemed more prudent to me to make that change, because if AI can fulfill even just half the promises that we think it can, it will be so consequential for our civilization that sort of tomorrow will look vastly different from today. And contributing to that was in my mind a lot more meaningful than studying economics and managing money in a nutshell.
Okay. So as you mentioned about this book, The Singularity is Near, I haven't read the book, but I went over it through the synopsis and information provided on the internet, and it was released around 2005, right?
Yes, correct. It's a comparably old book, so some of the stuff in there is a little bit out of date compared to how we see things today, but it was definitely a game changer for its time.
Okay. So for any of our audience who is not familiar with this book, so can you give a brief about what this book is and how did it
Hmm.
inspire you?
Absolutely. So what Ray Kurzweil is ostensibly discusses is sort of the singularity, which is, call it, I guess, a bunch of different technologies coming together, such as advances in biotech or advances in our scientific understanding more broadly, together with AI, that all comes together to create what is known as the singularity. And the singularity is just this point that we can't see beyond because technological progression at that point is so extreme, right? So singularity is a term that has later been co-opted by technologists to just refer to AI. So when it comes to stuff like artificial general intelligence or superintelligence, we often talk about the singularity. But I think that the major thing that has changed is that instead of all or a bunch of different technologies coming together to create a really extreme output, I think we today look at AI as the linchpin technology. So, if we tug at the AI technology thread, then everything else comes along with it. So AI is really the catalyst for advances in biotechnology or advances in broader scientific understanding. And I think that's one of the key changes that sort of Kurzweil, I don't think, could have seen back in 2005. And it isn't a book I would recommend you start with if you're trying to conceptually try to understand AI. There are books out there that does this better. So one of them would be Max Tegmark's Life 3.0, does this really well. But also Yuval Noah Harari's Homo Deus does this really well. And as a side note to that, I would say sort of the other books in that series of books is also really worth giving a read.
Okay. I'll surely look into that. And you have a pretty international experience because you said that you have worked in AI for almost a decade. So that obviously says that you have worked with different sort of clients and different range of companies, small to big. So how do you see the landscape of AI software development evolving globally, and what opportunities and challenges do you think that companies can see in the space and they can use that as an opportunity for creating more business for them?
Sure. Before we start on that, though, I think it's prudent to clarify the different stages of AI technology as we see them today. So right now we are on what is known as artificial narrow intelligence, right? So even large language models today, even though they seem very intelligent, they lack a key component, which is generalization, right? So ChatGPT, Claude, all of them, they have very, very limited capabilities to generalize. And generalization is essentially taking the knowledge that you already have and applying that to new situations, right? So we do that as humans fairly interchangeably. So that means that if you have a set of knowledge that is broadly applicable to other situations, then we would be able to recognize that. For the current generation of models, this is, if it's seen it before, great, it can generalize on it. But if it hasn't seen it before, it will struggle with that, right? So the next generation of models is what we refer to as AGI, or artificial general intelligence. And that's where that G it becomes very, very central, right? So next generation of models hopefully have that ability to generalize from its data set and apply that to new knowledge, which would be a game changer in and by itself. And then there is this third phase to this, which is super intelligence. And none of us really know what that looks like. I actually think that AI will be super consequential, because even at the current generation of models, which, mind you, are artificial or considered to be artificial narrow intelligence, coding is one of the things that these models do fairly strongly. And that seems to be improving month over month. So the zero-shot metrics or the zero-shot benchmarks seems to be improving, as the months go by. So I fully foresee a future, which is not too distant, where the concept of just-in-time software, so essentially consider that a chatbot that is also a software engineer end-to-end. So just by simple prompting, you can actually create entire, call it, software application with front or fully functioning front end, back end integrations, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is good, in my opinion, because it democratizes software. It enables everyone to develop software for their own purposes, just through simple natural language. When we look at the implications more broadly for the economy, right, this is the kind of stuff that could kill SaaS companies, right? Because what's the point of, or say that you are developing CRM applications, right? What's the point of being a CRM developer if, call it, anyone can go to, for the sake of it, let's say OpenAI, right, ChatGPT, and just through simple natural language describe the application that you want, and then as long as it has access to the infrastructure to deploy those applications, it just goes out and does all the things that you need, including the design of the application. And so there are definitely some call it bad news, I think, for in particular ISVs. So if your key business model today is developing software of any kind, that might not be so relevant for the future. But on the upside, the fact that anyone can develop anything it's huge. What that could mean for our economy, more broadly speaking, and in terms of democratizing opportunity, is just massive.
I agree. And I have a mix of feelings about what you said. You said that we are in artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, so the three levels that I think everyone needs to visualize in their head is artificial narrow intelligence, which is where we are now, artificial general intelligence, where we will be in X number of years from now, and then super intelligence, which we hope is going to be a little bit further, because I don't think society can adjust to super intelligence if that happened quickly.
And we are seeing so many different possibilities when we are just at the first stage of narrow artificial intelligence. So it's kind of mind-boggling to even think about what the future holds when it comes to AI being implemented not just in software development but in other sectors as well. As someone who is currently the head of AI advisory and solutions at TimSpark and also leading an organization of your own, I believe you also focus a lot about the ethical use of AI, which is also being talked about a lot right now, about data safety, about the ethical use of AI. So how do you ensure that your company, TimSpark, AI software development projects align with ethical consideration and contribute positively to society while also pushing the boundaries of technological innovation?
So the first thing to sort of stress is that there are two components of alignment. The first is the technological alignment, which concerns the technology itself. How do you implement that with enough guardrails to prevent misuse? For instance, when we work with these systems, is that we, on a technological level, prevent them from sort of divulging information like that, even though that is contained within their artificial neural networks. I also think there is another alignment that needs to happen here, which is the social alignment, right? And the thing about sort of social alignment when it comes to AI is that it changes the dynamics, right? So I can give you an example of that. In my own venture, the startup that I'm heading up, there is a ton of documentation that we need to generate, right? So stuff like NDAs or contracts or whatever. Just a few years ago, that would have been something that took us weeks to do, right? If we had to think about every single thing that goes into a legally binding document, we would probably spend a week, maybe a week and a half to do that. Now that has been reduced to hours by just iterative prompting. Yeah, I mean that's what these models do really well. They generate text, and they've seen millions of these NDAs probably, so they can craft an NDA far better than what we can do, or any kind of document really, in a business setting. Which means that sort of the social alignment here is also kind of key, because what is happening is that what was previously sort of limited to specialists, right? So what is more important is that you have strong general knowledge, and then you can supplement the specialist knowledge that you need with, call it, AI, which is a very interesting, call it, social dynamic that I don't think we've really seen before. And if you think about what this means for stuff like the labor market, where the entirety of the labor market is essentially based on the idea of specialists, right? So the idea that you go to school and you get an education in, say, finance, and then sort of you use that knowledge as a specialist for a company or in public sector or wherever it may be. That dynamic is now changing because it's more about which humans have the strongest general knowledge and can apply that knowledge in specialist domains with the help of AI. And in that, sort of those changes is going to be extremely radical. So we also need to call it the social alignment in mind as we're implementing this. So try to have a better holistic understanding of the consequences of the stuff that we're doing.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I really like how we are not just talking on the surface, but really getting into how AI is being used ethically, or there are two aspects to it. Then we also talked about the different times of AI and how we are currently in the first one, which is the narrow artificial intelligence. I think it's amazing. And as AI is growing and collecting information, and it is kind of getting complex to also build expert teams for AI software development. So, can you elaborate on the strategies which you use at TimSpark to assemble good people and dynamic teams who are capable of tackling the diverse challenges of AI development projects?
That's a very interesting question. So, like I said at the beginning, right now, there is difficulty in getting AI specialized resources, right? So there's very few people out there that have, say, 4 years of experience with transformers or large language models. Those people you will only find in frontier model laboratories like OpenAI. And sort of the people that are now leaving school have a degree in computer science with specialization in artificial intelligence. Sort of companies like Microsoft and NVIDIA are coming out offering insane salaries to these people. So, something to the tune of $800,000, I think is what I've heard, which means that they've basically cleaned up the market for AI talent, at least the type of AI talent that you need to do really big things. But that's not to say that we can't use AI to sort of smoothen over the limitations in the knowledge of the people that we already have, right? So right now, the strategy is and will be in the foreseeable future to take the people that we have access to and use AI to make them more efficient, right? So enable them to do more with AI. So essentially, AI will be doing the upskilling. It will be doing sort of the support functions to allow the people that we already have access to, allow them to do their jobs a lot quicker and reduce the time to development, right? That's the approach that we are forced into doing. Like ideally, we would all have access to AI engineers and sort of data scientists that can turn, call it, traditional data into vector storage, et cetera, et cetera. But it's very hard to come across those people at least in bulk, right? So you might be able to come across some people that are just generally really interested in AI, and that's really the people that we're going after. At least that I'm going after. If you are interested in AI, I don't really care if you've worked for, say, NVIDIA, or if you've just done some stuff in the basement of your own home. I would tend to go for the latter because the passion and the interest is usually a good indicator for your understanding.
That's amazing, and that's a very good way to look at, because as technology is changing, we might not be able to get exactly what we are looking at, but if we have access to a good pool of people and use different AI tools to make them better at their jobs and at certain tasks, we'll be able to make things easier even for the people who are working and also bring out good work.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So, I would like to have or to be in the situation where my employees can automate most of sort of the tasks or the mundane tasks, the time drains, right? That's the stuff you want to automate. And then the stuff that requires creativity, right, that we want humans to, or human operators to focus on. And that's the philosophy that I'm employing, both for TimSpark and sort of my other venture.
Okay, that's great. And Carl, as you mentioned that, you have a passion of kind of in a way demystifying AI for others. And I'm sure you must have come across clients who are new to AI technology and they are willing to adapt that in different forms in maybe software development, mobile app development, web development. So how do you bridge the gap for those clients? How do you bridge the gap between technical complexity and accessibility in AI software development? How do you educate them so that they can come to this side of the tunnel, maybe?
Yeah, so that's another excellent question. When it comes to organizations and customers more specifically, there's essentially two types of personas that we engage with. The first would be sort of the non-technical people, right? So what we usually do with non-technical people is that, we want them to imagine the future, because mostly decision makers with customers, like C-level executives, are non-technical people, most of them anyway, unless they're CTOs or CIOs or CISOs, mostly non-technical people. So when it comes to sort of them developing a sound AI strategy for the future, we need to get them to think about the future, which is inherently hard because the human mind isn't really attuned to think about the future in the way that we need to think about the future when it comes to AI. So that's more a communicational exercise, right? So sort of tell them what these models are capable of doing and what we expect them to be capable of doing. So essentially artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and then superintelligence, and then align that to their business, right? So essentially demonstrate that, well, if this happens, then sort of that could be an existential risk for your business, because this is what you're doing. And if AI can do it better, then this would be an existential thing for your business, unless you're the ones that develop that sort of AI system. So that's the first aspect of this. And call it the more technical people in an organization. That communication needs to be handled a little bit differently, because obviously they come in to this with a much stronger background in sort of the different technologies. So that's more a question of a shift in mindset, right? So AI technology is inherently different from all other technologies we've seen in the IT space before, in the sense that they are semi-intelligent. We expect them to get the ability to self-improve at some point in the future. And with that, sort of the technical aspects also changes a little bit, right? So how do you get these systems to learn? Well, that's not just hooking up an SQL database to call it a model and then expect that model to learn from the data sets in the SQL database, right? That's not going to work, because that's not how these models learn. They learn through vectors.
Okay. And I believe that, you paint a good picture for those founders of how bringing AI to any sort of software development will actually help them, right?
Definitely.
That's great. And coming up to the last question that we have, this AI wave has brought a lot of companies who are working in providing AI solutions for their clients, but they do not have a clear vision of what might work or what might not work for them. So for businesses who are considering AI adoption, what advice would you offer to them to ensure that there's a successful software development journey which they go through?
Yeah, that's also another excellent question. So let's start off with this, right? There are essentially three basic components that needs to be covered when you start considering adopting AI. The first is sort of the more social aspect of it. So essentially what workflows or what strategy or budgets, etc. Like the more soft aspects, like how heavy are you going to go into the AI or try and ride the AI wave, right? That doesn't change. So any business that wants to adopt AI needs to have a conversation internally about sort of how they're going to do it. And even though we can sort of help with that, like give them a better information to make those decisions on, that is a thing that each and every individual company and organization out there needs to do on their own, ostensibly. But then there's the other way of going about it, which is how do you reinforce the sort of the strategy or the plans that you're making technologically? And I want to say that there is two basic approaches. The first is that you can start developing this as applications. So essentially wrappers around models. Personally, I don't think that's a good way to go about it, because you are essentially engineering yourself into a very massive problem with that, which is that the AI technology space is moving really quickly. So if you build a static application on one model that might be out of date tomorrow, then you've done a whole bunch of work today that doesn't carry value in the future, which is a net net loss just overall.
True.
The approach that I prefer to take, and this is also what we are doing and the concept that we've been building on, is the idea of platformizing. So essentially building out a platform that is based on AI agents. So the agents are the components in the platform, and then that way you can change each component as more relevant technology in each, call it, workflow becomes available. So that is our philosophy around this, not applications, but platforms.
Okay. So is there an example of any such platform which is currently in the market, or if you could have a better explanation about such platform?
Well, so we actually go to market on custom building these. I fully foresee that there will become, and to a certain extent, there are some solutions out there that allows you to build agents or AI agent platforms. But I have always found these to be very limiting in the sense that what you're essentially trying to do with an out-of-the-box platform is that you're trying to capture workflows that are standardized. But anyone who's ever taken a look under the hood of any organization knows that sort of the system estates or evolves over time, right? So you add more and more systems, more and more data, and more workflows into sort of your system's estate over time. And in order to better accommodate this in sort of the age of AI, in my opinion, the same approach would be that you build out a custom platform that is entirely designed for your business needs and your business landscape and technical topography more broadly. And this is also one of the great value statements of AI more broadly, is that you don't need to standardize, right? You can customize. And that is something that stems from both the virtue of the speed at which you can develop, but also more broadly, the sense that you now have a tool that can better map out certain processes. You can get a better understanding if you use AI to do the mapping for you, and then you build off of that map. And I would want to say that sort of if you do this correctly, you capitalize on the fact that you can customize for your business.
That's amazing information, Carl. And I really liked how we got into the nitty-gritty details of, whether that was implementing AI in software development, and talking about the book Singularity is Near, and how can people, choose to read different books, which are like the Singularity is Near is not a great book for beginners in AI. So thank you for the recommendation that you gave. And thank you for sharing your knowledge about AI on our platform. Any parting thoughts on something about AI, something that you want our audience to know about?
Yes, there is. And that is that we are now heading into the politicization of AI technology. So this is more macro, more than anything else, but I do want the audience to know about this and be aware of it, which is that right now everyone is forming opinions on AI. Those opinions may or may not align with reality. And that is part of sort of the greater sort of political shift or politicization of AI. And the outcomes of that process could be massively negative. So I would urge everyone to sort of try and get accurate information about AI more than sort of all types of information. Like accuracy is key here to understanding this technology.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Carl, for sharing your experience and information on our platform along with our audience. I got to know a lot of things about AI. I'm surely gonna read some articles after this podcast. So thank you so much, Carl. And I hope our audience had a wonderful time learning about AI in software development. So if there are any questions or you want to reach out to Carl, we are gonna drop his LinkedIn profile and TimSpark Goodfirms profile in the podcast description, so that people can reach out to you and have a discussion about this.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.